Hi guys, welcome back. So now we have cast on our yarn. We have all of our materials. Sorry, we've wound up our yarn. We haven't cast on yet. That's what we're here to do now. So we've wound up all of our yarn and we're ready to cast on. And yeah, so we do a pretty standard, what seems like a pretty standard garter tab cast on for the beginning of this shawl. I've got my needles and everything ready. But we're going to do a slight variation on your standard garter tab cast on. I'm going to use Judy's magic cast on. So for those of you who've done a garter tab cast on before, you know you cast on a small number of stitches, you knit back and forth a few rows, and then you turn and pick up stitches along the garter edge, and then you pick up stitches along your cast on edge. So by doing it with Judy's magic cast on, you don't have to pick up along the cast on edge, and so you get a more seamless finish to the garter tab cast on, because sometimes it can be a little bit tricky to make sure you pick up the right number of stitches in that cast on edge and keeping it looking neat. So I'm going to quickly show you how to do that, and I'll show with this yarn, but first I'm going to demonstrate it with some thicker yarn. So the instructions will tell you what to cast on. So we're casting on 3 pairs of stitches using Judy's magic cast on. Now I'm not going to like really slow down and show you how to do Judy's magic cast on like in slow motion or anything. There are lots of videos on YouTube showing you how to do that. I'm just doing it the way that I remember. So now watch me forget and mess this up. So I think you start and you want to make sure you've got a twist in your yarn, and you want your tail to be at the top and your working yarn from the bottom. At least this is how I've done it. Put the loop on the back needle. You got your needles, your circular needles held together with both the points facing left. You put your first loop of yarn on the back needle, and then you take the tail yarn and wrap it from the outside into the middle. Okay, so that's your first pair of stitches. Now you're going to take the working yarn that's around your thumb and you're going to bring it from the outside to the middle on that top needle, and then from the outside to the middle on the bottom needle with the tail yarn. So that's 2 pairs of stitches. And then again with the working yarn and the top needle from the outside to the middle, and then with the tail yarn from the outside to the middle around the bottom needle. Okay, so there's your 3 pairs of stitches. Now what you're going to do is you're going to turn the work so the wrong side of the cast on stitches is facing you, so this side with these bumps. Okay, and when you hold the yarn, okay, now this is going to be the needle that you pull out. So if you're looking at it from the wrong side, what is the needle at the back now is going to be the one that you pull out to knit across these stitches. Okay, so this side is going to be essentially the cast on edge stitches that we pick up later. So make sure you keep track of which is your tail and which is your working yarn. What I like to do here is I like to cross my tail over the working yarn, so when I pick up to knit with this yarn, the tail gets caught essentially, so that last stitch doesn't come undone. Alright, so we're going to pull out this back needle, and then we're going to knit across these 3 needles. And these stitches should all be orientated correctly on your needles. Okay, so that's the first 3 stitches done. So now we're going to do an additional 5 rows of knitting back and forth across just these 3 stitches. So you see those other stitches just sit there live on the cable, just hanging out, doing their own thing. And we're just going to knit back and forth 5 more times. So this is 1, 2, 3, 4, and this is 5. Now you're not going to turn your work, you're going to keep it on this side, okay? I'm going to turn your work 90 degrees. So we're going to go 90 degrees clockwise. And we're going to pick up one stitch in each of these garter bumps. So we're going to pick up and knit 3 stitches along the garter edge. So we've got 1, 2, 3. Okay, so just poke the needle in and pick up a stitch. 1, 2, and there's the 3rd. Okay, make sure that tail stays on the wrong side. Now what you're going to do is you're going to pull your needle through these stitches that you've left just hanging out. And then you're just going to knit across them. These are the last 3 stitches that would have been the cast on edge. So you just knit through those. It might be a little bit tight, those 3 stitches, but that's okay. And there you have your garter tab cast on. It looks a little bit wonky, but if you pull it down onto your cable and stretch out your stitches a bit, you can see how that works. You've got the 3 on one side, the 3 on the cast on side, and then the 3 that we picked up in the middle. So there's your nice, and then on the wrong side it looks nice and neat. Your nice and neat little garter tab cast on. Okay, so hopefully that was clear and you were able to see what I did there. What I'm now going to do is I'm going to do this again, but with the yarn I'm actually going to use for the pattern, and then we'll move on and I'll do the setup rows for section 1 as well. Okay, got my tail at the top, my working yarn at the bottom, got the twist first loop onto my back needle, and then bring the tail round from the bottom to the middle on the bottom needle, then from the outside to the middle with the working yarn on the top needle, and the tail from the outside to the middle on that bottom needle, working yarn outside to the middle, and tail outside to the middle on the bottom there. So we've got our 3 pairs of stitches. I'm going to turn and look at our work from the wrong side. Okay, and again, as I mentioned before, we're going to just undid that last loop, did not mean to do that. You're just going to take that tail yarn and cross it over the working yarn. Just hold it out of the way with your other hand. And then we're going to pull what is the back needle, or the bottom if you're holding it vertically, out. And we're going to knit across the top stitches, the first 3 stitches. Okay, and then we're going to knit back and forth for 5 more rows, sorry. So you'll have done 6 rows in total. That's 1. That's 4. And this is the last one, 5. Okay, and when we get to the end of this, we're not going to turn. We're just going to we're not going to turn our work around. We're going to just rotate 90 degrees to the right, so clockwise, and we're going to pick up 1 stitch in each of these garter bumps. So we're picking up 3 along this edge. So you just poke your right needle in, wrap the yarn and pull it through. Poke, wrap, pull through. And then poke, wrap, pull through. Make sure that tail goes onto the other side of the work so it's out of the way. And then you can pull your needle through these last 3 stitches that we left hanging out over there, and just knit across them now. And these might be twisted, these stitches might be twisted, so you can knit them through the back loop to untwist them as you go. And that can sometimes happen with Judy's Magic Cast On. Okay, so now you should have 9 stitches on your needles. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. If you find this method too confusing or complicated, feel free to just do a regular garter tab cast on. Just cast on normally. You do everything exactly the same as what we did, except when it comes to knitting those last 3 stitches, you'll be picking up those 3 stitches from your cast on edge rather than having the live stitches waiting for you to knit. That is also completely fine, and as long as you end up with 9 stitches at the end, you're good. Okay, So now we're going to get ready to work our section 1 setup rows. So you need your stitch markers at this point. So I'm just going to grab 4 loopy stitch markers. Okay, so what we do here, just following what the pattern says. So now this first row that we're going to knit, this is a wrong side row. So if it helps you, at least in these beginning stages, if you want, you can pop in some like a removable stitch marker on the right side to let you know which is the right side and wrong side. That's optional. So just gonna knit 3, place a marker, knit 1, marker, knit 1, marker, knit 1 more, and the last marker, and finish off that row. Okay, so we still have 9 stitches. We've just added in our 4 markers, and these markers will let us know where we're going to do our increases. And then we have 2 more setup rows. So now this is a right side row. So for me, I will know now, because I've got a red marker as my first one, that when I'm looking at my work, if I have a red marker at the beginning of the row, then this is a right side row, and if I have a green marker at the beginning of my row, then it's a wrong side row. So you can also use your markers as a way of figuring out whether you're on a right side or a wrong side row. But once you get through the first couple of sections of the shawl, it will then become very apparent which is the right and wrong side. It's just initially for this first section, it can be a bit confusing. Okay, so there are actually 2 increase methods that I include with this pattern as options that you can use. There's your pretty standard make one left, make one right increase methods, which are used a lot in lots of patterns. And there's also a yarn over increase method, which again is pretty standard, but the way that I do the yarn over method is so you do the yarn overs on the right side row when you're increasing, but then on the wrong side rows when you're working back, you knit those yarn overs through the back loop, and that closes the hole so you don't get a big holy big holes, yarn over holes in the increases of your work. So I'm just trying to grab the shawl to show you. So this is the shawl we're knitting, and you'll see here that in the increases section you don't see those yarn overs, you don't see big yarn over holes that are pretty typical in shawls that use a yarn over increase. And I'll show you the middle section as well. Okay, so you can see so the increases are on either side here, and there's no big holes. Okay, so this is the method that I prefer, just because I personally feel like it's quicker knitting this way, but feel free to use whichever method that you prefer. I'm going to demonstrate both increase methods for you so you can see how that looks. So for the first one, we're just going to do the first increase I'm going to just do the normal make one left, make one right increases. Just going to knit to the first marker, slip that first marker, and then we're going to do a make one right. So this is a right leaning increase. So you just pick up the bar between the stitches, and then you put it onto your left needle, going from wrong way around, going from back to front. Okay. And then you knit it through the front loop. Okay, that's a right leaning increase. And then you do another knit one, slip marker, knit one, slip marker. And now we're going to knit one. This time we're going to do a make one left on this side. This was just a setup row, so I mean you have 2 stitches to increase. So again, you're going to pick up that stitch between that bar between the stitches and put it on the left needle. This time it's going to be from front to back, so you're putting the needle in from front to back, and you're going to knit this stitch from the back loop. Okay, slip the marker and knit the last 3 stitches. Okay, then on the wrong side row, we're just going to knit all the stitches, slipping markers as we reach them. The advantage of doing the make one right, make one left increases is that on the wrong side rows, you are just knitting. However, with the yarn over method, on the wrong side rows, you have to remember to knit those yarn overs through the back loop. So it's just a little bit more thought that goes into it. But overall, I prefer that personally. Okay, so now you've done your setup rows, we're all ready to go. You should have 11 stitches on your needles. 3, 2, 1, 2, 3. Yeah, so that's 11. So now we're going to have to, we're going to be knitting the garter pattern instructions. So there's a section, ignore the fact this text is not the right formatting or anything, but under the pattern instructions section, there's 2 versions of the garter pattern that you can use. One is with the yarn over method, and one is the make one increase method. And like I said, I will demonstrate both of them for you. And we're going to be doing that until you've used up approximately 20 to 25% of what is your main color yarn. For some reason I can't find my knitting scales right now, so I just grabbed my kitchen scales to do a quick little weigh of how much I have of my main color yarn. So I have about 220 grams, 219. So I'm just going to go, let's just say 200 to be safe. I'm just going to go until I've used up half of this skein, so about 100. Sorry, so I've used up about 50 grams of this skein to for my section 1. Okay, now a couple of other things to go over for section 1 before I start demonstrating how to do the increases. You're going to want to make sure that you can knit this section, like I said, until you've used up around 20-25% of your main color yarn. The only thing you want to make sure that when you stop working this pattern is that your stitch count between markers 1 and 2, so at the moment there's only 2 stitches there, and then between markers 3 and 4, again only 2 stitches there. These should always have the same stitch count between them, and you want to make sure these 2 sections are a multiple of 10. Okay, so for example, you're always going to have 3 stitches at the beginning and the end of your rows, and in between the middle 2 markers you're always going to have 1 stitch. So the only place where your stitch count is going to change are between the first 2 markers and between the last 2 markers. Okay, so you can keep going until at some point when you come close to finishing you want this middle section to be a multiple of 10. So for example, you could have 3 stitches, then 50, then 1, then 50, and then 3. Okay, so that would be a good place to stop and then move to the next section. This is detailed in the pattern as well if you have that, but I thought I'd mention that quickly here at the beginning. And then when we come to do the next section, I will also remind you of that there as well. And then for those of you who like to keep track of your stitch counts and follow, and keep track of where you're at, there's a stitch count tracker. Sorry, again, like I said, this, for some reason this printout didn't print off correctly formatting wise. There is a stitch counts checklist at the end of the pattern where you can keep track of where you're at and how many stitches you have on the needles. Okay, so let's get to it. So the first increase method I'm gonna demonstrate is going to be the regular make one left, make one right increases again. Make one left, make one right increase garter repeat pattern. Okay, so you're just going to knit to the marker, slip marker, and then you're going to do a make one right first. So that's, you're going to pick up the bar between the stitches, and you're going to put it onto the left needle from back to front. Okay, from back to front under that bar. And then what I find helpful is with my left index finger, I kind of pull that yarn, that stitch, or that little bit of yarn forward a little bit, so there's a bit of a gap there for me to slip my needle into. There you go. And then knit that through the front loop. That's a make one right. And then knit to the marker. And we're going to do another make one right. So again, you lift it, and then from the back to the front. And slip that through the front and knit. Slip the marker, knit one, slip the marker, and then we're going to do a make one left. So now we're going to take it and we're going to put it through the front to the back. You're going to put the left needle through that strand from the front to the back, and you're going to knit that stitch through the back loop. And again, knit to the end. Pick up the strand between the stitches, and you're going to put that left needle in through from the front to the back and knit that through the back loop. Slip the marker and knit to the end. Then, like I said before, the wrong side row is just knit all the stitches. Okay, so we started out with 11 stitches, and so with each garter repeat pattern you're adding 2 stitches, so you're adding 4 stitches, 2 in each of these sections here. So we started out with 11 and we should now have 15 stitches. So we have 3 and 4 7, 8 and 4 12, and 3 15. Okay, so now I'm going to do it again. This I'm going to show you the yarn over method. So you just knit to the marker, slip the marker, yarn over, knit to the marker, knit to the marker, yarn over, slip marker, knit 1, slip the marker, and now you're going to do a reverse yarn over. So a typical yarn over, you bring the yarn round the needle from underneath to the front, but with a reverse yarn over you do the opposite. You go from over the needle to the back. Okay, so that's a reverse yarn over. You knit up to the marker again, and then we're going to do another reverse yarn over. So instead of a normal yarn over, you bring the yarn under the needle to the front, and with a reverse yarn over you take the yarn over the needle and back and round to the back again. Okay, over the needle to the back, slip the marker, knit to the end. Now when it comes to knitting the wrong side, you knit your first 3 stitches as per usual, slip your marker. So this time we're going to knit this yarn over through the front loop. So again I pull that forward, pull that yarn forward with my finger and knit that through the front loop, knit along to the next yarn over. And this is another one because this was a reverse yarn over, so we're going to knit that through the front loop on the wrong side. Slip the marker, knit that center stitch, slip the marker, and then this time we're going to knit these yarn overs. These were the regular yarn overs we did on the right side. On the wrong side we're going to knit these through the back loop. And knit through the back loop. Okay, so those are the 2 different options for increasing that you can do. They do look fairly similar, but like I said, for consistency, I mean they do pretty much look identical at the end of the day, but for consistency, so you don't confuse yourself, it'd be easier to stick with just one method throughout. And we've added another 4 stitches there, so we should now have 19 stitches. But you see what I mean, that you're only increasing in these sections here between these markers. All the other stitch counts at the beginning and in the middle stay the same. So now I'm at a point where I think, oh, I have what, 6 stitches? Yeah, 6 stitches in the middle here. So we're just going to keep knitting at this point until we get to where we're going to stop and move on to our next section. So this is section 1 that we're going to knit now. And then the next section is going to be our first transition section. Okay, so I'm going to knit along and I will be back to join you in the next video where we will tackle section 2 and our first transition section where the next color comes in. So that'll be fun. Okay, so you guys now need to just go and knit on until you get to having used up about 20%, 25% of your yarn, and you want to make sure that your stitch count between these stitches are a multiple of 10. Feel free, if you get to having used up 25% or 20% and you still need to knit a couple of more repeats to get to the right stitch count, then just do that. Like I said, this pattern is very flexible and very easy to play around with. As long as you end up with the right numbers at the end of the day, that's fine. Okay, all right, so I'll see you guys in the next video.